So past lives are a funny thing. Like Erdene Zoo Monastery. I remember when the communist forces rode into the monastery and rounded everybody up together and started burning and destroying all the different monasteries that were in the compound. So at Erdene Zoo Monastery in Mongolia, very important place in the story, in the stories of Mongolia, there's a compound where there were many monasteries and with stupas all around them, white stupas all around, right, creating a wall around them. And it's a very important spiritual place. And the main abbot responsible for that compound was there at the time. And anyway, so in my memories, I remember being there when this happened, right? But I remember it as the Vishnu, as the all pervading one. So I remember it from the perspective of the main rider of the communist forces and his perspective and what he was doing to burn down and destroy all the monasteries. But I remember it from the perspective of the main abbot as well of the monastery. And that is the perspective I remember it from it most. And also how I saved the three temples, the three Chinese temples, Chinese made temples that are there and that survived, right? So how did I save those, right? When all this was taking place, I stood in front of those three temples and I faced the communist forces and the rider that was leading them on his horse. And I stood in front of them and I told them, you cannot burn down these temples. You cannot destroy these temples because these temples are Chinese, right? So if you burn these down, you risk the anger of China against the communist forces that burned down their temple. So I stood in front of the communist forces, right, and told them, stood up to them and told them they could not destroy the three temples that survived. Because I told them if they did, they risked the anger of China against themselves. So they left those three temples, which were to be saved because they were important for the Buddhism. And to confirm in a way as well what is the time paradoxes of an avatar who remembers these things in the past but who comes in the future and all these different things. So these three temples, I have not been physically, but I have seen them on YouTube. And I remember the story and all these different things taking place at that time. So that was my visit of the temple. And actually, when I visited the temple on YouTube, something very interesting happened where I was watching the YouTube tape and it went straight to Mahakal and stopped on Mahakal. And the screen froze, but the music kept playing. The video kept advancing, but the screen froze on Mahakal, which is something that's impossible in a YouTube video. It never does that, right? So it just froze on the Mahakal and the video kept playing. So it was a bug in time and space in YouTube happening at my time when I entered those temples, because it was me coming back to a place where I was in a previous lifetime, in a previous incarnation. So what happened at that point is the person that I was, the abbot, standing in front of those three temples. The communist leader on his horse said, "Okay, well, I won't destroy the temples, but I don't have to keep you alive." So what he did at that point is he killed me at that point, and I bled onto the ground in that place at Erdene Zoo. And the communists left, leaving everything in flame and destruction, and left the place, and they left the three temples that I had protected, so that this avatar would be able to visit them through YouTube, and maybe one day in person, to get the experience of entering them, etc., through the videos that were done with the help of the people who filmed those videos and put them on YouTube, all in a coordinated effort, all of us working together for the betterment of the master story. So this is the story of how I saved the three Chinese temples at Erdene Zoo. How I convinced the leader of the communists through skill of words that if he destroyed them, he risked the anger of China. And they decided to not destroy it because he was well convinced by a man who was well dedicated to saving those 3 temples, even at the risk of his own life. Thank you for listening to this video on the Zen Warrior channel.